What's up, everybody? Did John Calipari just coach his last game at Kentucky? Locked On SEC starts right now.
You are Locked On SEC, your daily podcast on the Southeastern Conference. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everybody? Welcome into Locked On SEC. It's great to have you guys along on today's show. The aftermath of Kentucky's first-round exit. We'll discuss that and much more, as it was not a great day for the SEC in the first round of the NCAA Tournament. But I'm Chris Gordy. Thanks for making Locked On SEC your first listen every day. Shout out to everydayers. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, covering your team every day. And this episode is brought to you by Nissan. If you're the kind of driver that likes to push things a little further, ever wonder what adventure could be around the next corner, take the Nissan Rogue, Nissan Pathfinder, or Nissan Armada and go find your next big adventure. Check them out all today at nissanusa.com. All right, the Kentucky Wildcats, their season came to an end over the weekend, or rather on Thursday, not even the weekend, as John Calipari's team electric all year offensively, but defense was not good, and man, did it come back to bite them, as this dude for Oakland just hit tons of threes, and they did not defend the outside shots very well, and Kentucky picked the worst possible time for one of their very worst performances of the season, and now their season is over. It's number 14 seed Oakland beat number 3 seed Kentucky 80-76 in the first round of the 2024 men's NCAA tournament. A lot of people were picking the Wildcats to make a run. A lot of people thought that they got a pretty lucky draw in this field, and a lot of people were picking them as a potential Final Four team, saying this might be the year. Calipari has had some years where he's shown glimpses, but this might be the year that they put it all together, for the first time in nearly a decade. And now Kentucky only has one NCAA tournament win in the last 4 years. With the South region seemingly wide open, like we said, Kentucky got a pretty easy draw, at least through to the Elite Eight. But Jack Golke coming off the bench to knock down 10 three-pointers for Oakland on 20 attempts, all behind the three-point line. 6'3" senior. I think he played, Hillsdale Division II before he transferred into Oakland. And Kentucky's defense just had no answer for him. And now for the second time in 3 years, Kentucky's season comes to an end in the first round of the NCAA tournament. In 2022, remember, it was the loss to St. Peter's. And here in 2024, it's a loss to Oakland as the Golden Grizzlies come away with the 80-76 win. And now calls are growing for John Calipari, for Kentucky to move on from John Calipari. And there's been a lot of talk about his contract. According to On3 Sports, John Calipari's buyout is currently $33 million if Kentucky decided to part ways with him. After this next coming season, that number will drop down to $27 million. But it was just 5 years ago, if you remember, that story broke that Calipari and Kentucky agreed to a, quote, lifetime contract. Now, there is a provision in that contract that says it allows Calipari to transition into the role of athletic director / university representative beginning in the 2024-2025 season. That would be next year. And that position would pay Cal $950K per year and continue on until the expiration of his current deal. So basically, when they said lifetime contract, they just thought it would be this thing that would run its course, and eventually, mutually, they would both agree, hey, maybe it's time for you to retire. You'll slide over into this university representative role. You'll help, fundraise. You'll help be a face of our, philanthropic efforts, and we'll pay you $1 million a year to do so. Well, nowhere in there was a thought that things might go sideways with Calipari, and this thing might not look pretty. Now, John Rothstein added, if Cal still wants to come back and coach next season at Kentucky, his buyout would require either Kentucky to pay him just under $34 million to go away, or someone else to come in and offer him at least $34 million. And it doesn't seem like any other schools are going to be doing that. Peter Burns made a pretty interesting suggestion on social media. He said maybe Calipari does what Jim Harbaugh did a couple of years ago at Michigan when things were not going very well for him. If you remember that, Harbaugh went into the brass in Michigan and said, hey, let's rework my deal. I'll take less money. And if anything, that would at least buy you some goodwill with the school and the fan base. Peter Burns said, could that change the vibes among the Kentucky fan base right now? Well, probably not. But another tweeter pointed out the NCAA tournament wins in the 2020s. Oral Roberts now has 2 wins. Fairleigh Dickinson has 2. And Kentucky has just 1 in the 2020s. With the loss to Oakland, Kentucky will end their season 23-10 overall. But unlike with the other 9 losses, Calipari said this one hit a little bit harder. He told TNT's Evan Washburn, he said, I told them after this one is painful. And the reason is there are other times you lose a game and you know your team is what it is. But this team I really felt was built for this moment. If you remember a few days ago, he had the quote, we're built for March. I don't know how you go from days ago saying we're built for March and then you go out there and lose to Oakland, a 14 seed over a 3 seed. Calipari will say, even though we were young, I knew that could catch us, but we had our chances. We threw the ball away. We took a bad shot. There were things that happened, and then we give up a corner 3 on that last play. And that was it. Dillingham and Reed Shepherd will likely be among the big-time players to take their talents to the next level off to the NBA. But when you look back on this season, Calipari said he hoped the loss to Oakland would not be the only thing people remember about this group. Well, fortunately, that's all people are going to remember. Now, we do need to show some love to Antonio Reeves. He scored 27. That will go down amongst the most points scored by a Kentucky senior in a loss in their final game of their career. It's up there with guys like Joe Crawford, Dan Issel, among others. And so what are Kentucky fans saying on social media? Well, I've seen some Kentucky fans posting, well, let's go with an optimistic post. I saw one guy say, well, he does have a few 5-stars already committed to next year. Maybe it's not the worst thing. We stay the course. We run this thing back, and we've had a couple unlucky breaks these last couple years. Let's see what we can do next year with these stud talents coming in. But another tweeter said, look, at this point, Kentucky fans don't care about 5 stars or future NBA studs. The team is not winning. He said that all that stuff was cool, bragging rights, when they were making Elite Eights and Final Fours every year. But bragging about how many dudes you put in the league doesn't sound as cool when you have no postseason success. Here were a few more tweets from Kentucky fans following this one. I've read one said, fire Calipari now. Raise your hand if you've been personally victimized by John Calipari. Another one, that team should apologize to Antonio Reeves. He deserves so much better. One said, Cal has to go. This is unacceptable and embarrassing. Didn't think this is what Cal meant by one and done every year. And then lastly, can we please be done with Cal now? I feel like the fan base is ready to pull our money and buy him out. This is such a sad era to be a Cats fan. And that's what's so crazy is, look, Kentucky fans, like them or not, look, if you're a fan of another SEC team, I get it. You're going to, laugh in their face and say, it's whatever. But Kentucky for years was thought to be kind of what Alabama was in football, right? Like they were the pinnacle. They were the gold star. If we're talking about the only team to win a championship out of the SEC in the last 20 years, it's Kentucky, right? Cal did it in 2012 with Anthony Davis. But now the conversation shifts, and it's about if they were to move on from Calipari. And again, it would take a massive buyout. It might take just, a backdoor deal, close the door and have a closed door conversation and say, look, this ain't working out for us. This ain't working out for you. You're hurting your legacy in falling short every year like you're doing here. So would probably take a tough conversation to have there. But if they were to move on, who would be some names for Kentucky to consider? We're going to throw some of those names out there at you coming up next here on Locked On SEC. Thank you guys for making us your first listen every day. That's coming your way in just a sec. But first, we want to remind you guys this episode is presented to you by our friends over at Manscaped. Brought to you by the spring cleaning champions, and that is Manscaped. This season, make sure to groom your carpets and the drapes with the leaders in below-the-waist grooming. Clear out that winter bush with Manscaped's Lawnmower 5.0 and watch your confidence bloom like the springtime flowers. Embrace the season and join the 10 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped with their latest offer. Go to manscaped.com, use code LOCKEDON, get 20% off and free shipping. And after using Manscaped, you can finally say you've caught that spring fever. Introducing the season's champ, the Lawnmower 5.0 Ultra. Their 5th generation trimmer features 2 interchangeable next-gen skin-safe blade heads, a standard wood for taking a load off the top, and a new foil blade to go smooth wherever your heart desires. Also features dual LED spotlights to guide you through the darkest winter debris. Navigate with confidence in your most delicate areas. Again, get 20% off and free shipping with that code LOCKEDON at manscaped.com. That's 20% off and free shipping with the code LOCKEDON at manscaped.com. Nothing like a little spring cleaning in your pants. All right. This episode also brought to you by our friends over at Game Time. We'll get 20% off and free shipping with the code or with our friends over at Game Time. Game Time. It's the only ticketing app that gives you complete peace of mind with your purchase. You can see the view from your seat when you buy, so you know exactly what to expect when you arrive at your favorite sporting event. All in prices, share your total up front, so you know exactly what you're getting. You're getting a great deal before you even check out. Buy tickets in seconds with 2 taps on the app. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use our code LOCKEDON. Get $20 off your first purchase. Again, terms apply. Create an account, redeem our code LOCKEDON, LOCKEDON. Get $20 off. Download Game Time today. It is last-minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Check them out, Game Time app. Along here, Locked On SEC. Hey, if you guys have been watching in Fox Sports or ESPN all day and you turn down that volume with all the shouting, make the switch over to Locked On Sports Today. It's a free 24/7 sports streaming channel program for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports Today, bringing you can't miss analysis, opinions, and news streaming 24/7 on YouTube with a free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, covering your team every day. All right, we've been kicking around. If Kentucky were to move on from John Calipari, and again, the Boo Birds are out in full force, people are wondering, can they make the move? But if they were, who are some coaching candidates if they did move on from Cal? Well, let's hit on a couple of names that have been kind of just thrown out there from some of the national people. Obviously, Nate Oats' name at Alabama gets thrown out, but with his new deal that was just approved at the University of Alabama, his buyout is in the range of $18 million. And so if you look at it feasibly, if Kentucky had to pay $34 million to get rid of Cal and another $18 million just to get Nate Oats out of his current Bama deal, I mean, it's a lot of money. You're talking over $50 million. And, you know, Kentucky's got money, but this isn't Texas A&M football booster money where they could pay $77 million for Jimbo Fisher to go away. I just think Nate Oats, take him off the table. He would be out in this conversation. But how about Scott Drew over at Baylor? 21 years there, over 400 wins. He won a national title there a couple of years ago, right after COVID. Scott Drew is certainly a very accomplished head coach. Would he make that jump? Again, a lot of people look at Kentucky still as the big-time blue blood. Would you want to make that jump to a bigger-time program? Get way more of the resources maybe you don't have at Baylor. Get a lot more 5-stars, certainly, at a school like Kentucky than you would at Baylor. So Scott Drew is certainly one to keep in mind. Eric Musselman at Arkansas. Look, I get it. This season was a huge disappointment for him. But prior to this, he took Arkansas to 3 straight Sweet 16s. He went to back-to-back Elite Eights in 22 and 23. A record of 221 and 93 overall as a head coach. Eric Musselman still is a good coach. He didn't forget how to coach. just had a bad year at Arkansas. Could he be a guy that Kentucky would consider? I certainly would. Another name on this list, I don't know if he would leave, but Mark Few, an extremely successful run at Gonzaga. I spent the past 25 years there, over 700 wins. But could he be wined and dined with the glitz of Lexington, Kentucky? Come to the blue blood again. When we talk big time programs, it's Duke, North Carolina, UCLA, and Kentucky. I mean, those are the big ones we always jump to. Mark Few again, great gig at Gonzaga. He's been awesome there. But could Kentucky pull him out? You would certainly make that phone call. And then one that's kind of maybe more a little bit of a reach. This is, maybe your fourth, fifth, sixth option down the list as you're running through names. But Chris Beard, his name pops up here. Obviously had success at Texas Tech, then at Texas. Had a decent year in year one at Ole Miss. They started off awesome. They just skidded down the stretch and just missed the tournament. But a good recruiter, very highly thought of. Chris Beard could be one of those names. And so those are just some of the preliminary names thrown out there for potential John Calipari replacements if Kentucky were to move on. Again, it's going to take a lot of money. Unless you can somehow if Kentucky can convince Cal to step aside. We'll see if that is able to happen. All right. It wasn't all bad for the SEC. Well, it was bad for much of Thursday, but the Tennessee Vols helped kind of salvage the day. That score going final, Tennessee, they led St. Peter's 46-20 at halftime after jumping out to a 27-7 lead midway through the period. And Tennessee goes on to beat St. Peter's 83-49. Dalton Connect with 23 points on the night. Jonas Adu had 15, and Tennessee rolled St. Peter's. The Peacocks got Kentucky a couple years ago. They did not get Rick Barnes and the Vols on Thursday evening. So Tennessee will face the 7 seed Texas in the second round on Saturday in Charlotte. Congrats to the Vols for getting it done and representing the SEC. But earlier in the day, Mississippi State, they lost to Michigan State 69-51. No Bulldogs scored in double figures. Tolu Smith had just 9 points. The Dogs were just 6 of 27 from 3. They shot 37% from the field. And Chris Jans' crew ended their season in the first round at 21-14. Meanwhile, South Carolina, an amazing season for Lamont Paris and the Gamecocks, but their season came to an end in the first round, losing to Oregon 87-73. Michi Johnson, he had 24 points, but Oregon shot an impressive 59% from the field, and they were just the better team. So earlier today, Thursday, Mississippi State goes down to Michigan State. South Carolina goes down to Oregon. And then in the evening, Kentucky goes down to Oakland before Tennessee pulls off the win over St. Peter's. But a lot of people were looking at it going, the SEC at one point was a dismal 0-3 on the day. And a lot of people bringing up those Greg Sankey comments from earlier in the week that we had talked about on the show, where he said, quote, "We are giving away highly competitive opportunities for automatic qualifiers from smaller leagues in the NCAA tournament. I think that pressure is going to rise as we have more competitive basketball leagues at the top end because of conference expansion." Again, this is all about Greg Sankey saying we're adding Texas and Oklahoma next year, but we're not getting the extra bids to the tournament, right? Like, we're going from 14 to 16 teams. So we can't just get 7 or 8 teams in the tournament. We need more than that. Again, Sankey advocated for taking away NCAA tournament bids from smaller leagues at smaller schools like the Oaklands and St. Peter's, saying they couldn't compete. Well, SEC went 1-3 on Thursday, and Kentucky was sent home by the Horizon League champ Oakland. And I saw a few people say, no wonder Greg Sankey doesn't want mid-majors in the tournament. SEC having a hard time with them. So, look, it's one of the rare moments the rest of the country can kind of take shots at Greg Sankey in the SEC. I brought it up the other day. I said the reason Greg Sankey feels a little inadequate here, men's basketball is the one sport that the SEC can't dominate in. We dominate in everything else. We dominate in football with championships. We dominate in baseball. We dominate in track and field. We dominate even women's basketball. LSU, the reigning champs. Dawn Staley in South Carolina, probably going to win it again this year. Like, we dominate in every other sport except men's basketball. In the last, 30 years, we had Kentucky win it in 96 and 98. We had Florida win it in whatever that was, 07, 08, the Joakim Noah years. And then we had the Calipari Anthony Davis team in 2012. That's it. And the SEC has not had great success in winning men's basketball championships in the last 20, 30 years. Just have not. So, all right, still more to come here on Locked On SEC, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, covering your team every day. Coming up next, we'll switch gears. A couple of Alabama recruiting tidbits. Kalen DeBoer doing a little work. We'll talk about that coming your way in just a sec. But first, I'll remind you, this episode is presented to you by our friends over at Nissan. This week's March Madness bracket highlight brought to you by Nissan. Each week, we're picking one team that stands out, a team that has pushed it further than the rest, just like the all-new 2024 Nissan SUVs. These guys were able to take it to the next level. And one of those teams, the Arizona Wildcats. They can be described as an armada. The 2 seed was as hardcore as it got out there, so it's no wonder they took it to Long Beach State in the first round of the NCAA tournament. They were a favored pick by many to make a run, and will face Dayton this weekend for a chance to go to the Sweet 16. We call the Tennessee Volunteers the Rogue, right? They took it right at you in St. Peter's, and they were rough and rugged and got the job done. So take the Nissan Rogue, the Nissan Pathfinder, or the Nissan Armada, and go find your next big adventure. Shop NissanUSA.com. Check out all the great vehicles and inventory they got there for you at NissanUSA.com. Find yourself a new ride here in 2024. Going along here, Locked On SEC, and it's been a fun night kind of kicking around some of the storylines from the SEC, particularly on the basketball side of things. But we do have to hit on a couple of football nuggets as Alabama football is getting it done. Kalen DeBoer doing a little work. The whole knock on him, can he recruit? Can he recruit? Well, Kalen DeBoer hitting that recruiting trail and doing his thing. 4-star linebacker Daryl Johnson, top 50 prospect in class of 2025, announced on Wednesday his commitment to the Alabama Crimson Tide. Chose the Tide over a list of schools including Florida State, Tennessee, Texas A&M. Number 48 player nationally, the number 5 linebacker according to 24/7 Sports. He was the highest rated prospect to join Bama's 2025 recruiting crop and jumped Alabama's class into the top 10 in the composite recruiting rankings. He is the 4th prospect to commit to, or was the 4th prospect to commit to Alabama and Kalen DeBoer in the month of March. Johnson told 24/7, he said, everyone knows the type of great program Alabama has. Honestly, Alabama's always been my dream school, but the fact that they have shown me and my family so much love, that brought it all together for me. Johnson is an accomplished high school player, listed as a linebacker, could play multiple spots at the next level. 6'1", 200 pounds. He's played defensive back, quarterback, running back, linebacker at Dodge County. So we'll see where he plays at the next level. But the Alabama recruiting momentum continued into Thursday as 4-star linebacker Abdul Sanders from the state of California committed to the Tide Thursday afternoon. The number 52 linebacker, the number 48 prospect from the state of California, 6'2", 210 pounds, and arrived in Tuscaloosa on Monday ahead of their spring practice on Tuesday and did not leave until Thursday. Spent several days there, and comes yet another commitment for Kalen DeBoer and his new staff, all in the month of March. And their class is now ranked number 8. Joins 4-stars Antonio Coleman, Zamir Smith, Derek Smith, Daryl Johnson. The rest of the class includes 4-stars Miles Johnson and Anthony Rogers. Sanders was at the capstone during junior day in February when he told Bama 24/7 that The visit to Bama was great. Said I got to meet many of the coaches, many of the players, and I have a very high interest in Bama. He said the campus and facilities were impressive. My favorite part was when Coach David Ballou explained how they track players' bodies and workouts. Also can give some credit to new defense coordinator Kane Womack. Sanders telling Bama 24/7, I love Coach Womack. He was explaining to me how he coaches, how he thinks I fit in his defense, and how he'd love me to be there. I like that Coach DeBoer is all about winning and having the mentality to win while having fun. So, look, give Kalen DeBoer a little credit, right? Alabama is loading up. We're used to Nick Saban doing this, and we didn't bat an eye. We just said, yeah, that's what they do. Kalen DeBoer, the jury is out. And he's still got to have to go prove it out on the field, right? They're still going to have to show a good brand of football and win a lot of games. I know a lot of Alabama fans are expecting playoffs this year with Jalen Milroe back at quarterback. But again, if he wins on the field, the recruits will continue to come. If they don't, they go 8-4. It's going to be a little bit of a tougher road to hoe to get those elite recruits that they've been getting under Nick Saban for the last 15 years. All right, other Bama news, Caden Proctor. We mentioned news coming out this week that he is going to enter the portal. He transferred from Alabama this offseason back home to Iowa. And news came out he is entering the portal once again and transferring from Iowa back to Alabama. Kirk Ferentz, Iowa head coach, putting in a statement, it's unfortunate that Caden informed us of his intentions to leave our program. We wish him well in the future. But multiple reports indicating Proctor is expected to return to Alabama after spring practice. And he seemed to confirm those reports after he shared an image of Michael Jordan on his Instagram story with the caption, I'm back. So big time get there for Kalen DeBoer back on his offensive line, getting Caden Proctor reportedly back through the transfer portal. And one more nugget here over at Ole Miss. Miami leading rusher Henry Parrish Jr. could be heading back to Oxford. According to reports, Parrish was not with the Hurricanes this week at practice. Expected to enter his name into the transfer portal. The spring window for undergrads will open again on April 16th. Parrish is set to begin his 5th college football season. He signed with Ole Miss back in the 2020 class, played 10 games as a true freshman. And reports say Parrish could be going back to Ole Miss to finish out his career. Lane Kiffin's program considered a top landing spot, according to Matt Zenitz of 24/7 Sports. So we'll see what happens with him, but certainly a productive running back. And look, they lost Quinshon Judkins to Ohio State this offseason. So Ulysses Bentley back, could certainly lose some other guys. Logan Diggs coming over from LSU, but he's been banged up. So Henry Parrish would be a nice piece to add back to that backfield there in Oxford. I know Lane Kiffin would certainly like to have him back there. And there you have it. That's the latest going on around the conference. Thank you guys for making Locked On SEC your first listen every day. Shout out to everydayers. Go on back Monday. We'll be recapping all the tournament action from the weekend. Hopefully the SEC has a little bit better showing going to this weekend. And will John Calipari survive? We'll discuss all that and more. Hey, for your second listen, go check out Locked On Sports has launched the first ever National Sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering the league. Locked On Sports Today on YouTube. I'm Chris Gordy. This has been Locked On SEC. We'll talk to you guys on Monday. Have a great weekend, everybody.